It's Hollie's Hotspurs, welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero in the back. Heung-min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back, relax and vibe with us. Special guest.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie's Hotspurs Live. I used to joke all the time this was a therapy session, but my God, I need one tonight. And with me to do so, I am joined by two fabulous guests. First of all, Jack, it's amazing to have you back on the show. How are you?
Good to be back, Hollie. I'm not sure who's going to provide more therapy, either you or Sonny, but someone's going to do it today. And you did say in the back end, your brain turns to mush, after a certain period. My brain turned to mush watching that game. I'm not even sure what football is anymore after watching that performance, but we'll get into it. Thanks for having me back.
No, thank you. Like I say, we need to talk it out because I'm so done with this club at the moment. But Sonny, it's great to have you here as well with Jack. How are you?
I'm good. My football club is not good. I think I'm losing the plot. My comment section is, I don't know what they think of me at the moment. I've gone on 2 biblical rants in the last week. I mean, entertaining, but the football isn't entertaining. So yeah, I'm a bit all done with this season, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, I love doing Hollie's Hotspurs on a Monday to get to talk to you guys and other people. But my word, it is a struggle at the moment. Because obviously at the weekend we lost 4-2 away to Wolves. That's now the 17th Premier League loss of the season. Jack, how are you kind of feeling all about it?
I feel like I'm trying to take it 1 week at a time, but the inevitable just seems to be coming with Ange Postecoglou. I'm holding on to some sort of type of run in this Europa League, which is, of course, what everybody's hearts and minds are set on. But I mean, it just feels like the end has been coming for a while now with Ange. Regardless of whether people think it's mostly his fault, maybe other people's fault. It's just the season has just been pretty poor from the get go, and we had maybe one little stint where, we were kind of happy clapping. At least I definitely was. We had a decent streak at one period, but for the most part, it's just been a lot of ups and downs and mostly downs. And that last performance really felt like, in my opinion, probably the worst one of 2025. I don't want to say 2024 because maybe there were worse ones than that I'm trying to wipe from my brain, but it did feel like one of the worst losses this season in general. And that says a lot because we've seen some pretty bad ones.
Defo. And I think that's as well, because obviously, sorry, I sit here a couple of weeks ago, obviously we were talking about whether I'm Ange in or Ange out. And now we fast forward a couple of weeks and I'm kind of sat here, what on earth was going through my head? Because obviously that loss at the weekend, being 4 goals going back of our net, even though Ange was saying we controlled the game, but we've conceded 4, just blew my mind.
I think he's lost it, hasn't he? He lost it after the Chelsea game, and yeah, that's that. I mean, I've just recorded a video that's going to be put out tomorrow where I'm just saying, is this the worst Tottenham season of all time? Because I really think it's up there. Not necessarily a relegation battle, but just the statistics. When you look at them all, some of the tweets from all the different media outlets of how bad we are, I just don't understand how you can back Ange anymore. And like Jack, like you, I was a big fan of Ange. I wanted it to work, but for me, that Everton game was the final straw for me. I was like, I can't see any silver lining. Even after that game yesterday, you think, is there an ounce of something where you go, no, we were good. There's literally nothing to put your coat hooks on. And he needs to go. He needs to go, if we get kicked out Thursday, do it then. Or just wait until the summer. It needs a refresh. And I know some people say, we'll give him more time, give him no, he's had enough time now. In football is a short-term game, and 2 seasons. Let's put it this way: lots of people always comment, but Sonny, Arteta in his first 2, no, but there was actually positive things, and also he won an FA Cup, which helped him. Whereas we don't look like we're going to achieve anything under him. It's such a shame. I'd still have that 5% of me, which is a bit sad about it. But let's just put it this way: so many people have also said, it's not Ange's fault we lost 4-2. It was 4 individual mistakes. I say 4, well, Vicario did 2 of them. That comes from the manager, because the manager is telling the team how to set up, how to play. And he even said, anything they do, it's on me. That was one of the first things he ever said. So when Bergwell's caught in possession, or Romero or whatever, that's on Ange. He sets the team up. And also, he motivates the team. That's why we conceded an early goal. That's why we set up so bad. And 6 changes. I understand 6 changes. But I just think a lot of those people, Archie Gray's, Burwell, they're just getting chucked in, fed to the lions, and it's just not fair. And I don't want to blame the players anymore because but the buck always stops with the manager in my eye.
I think that's the thing. Obviously, I was going to get onto Ange later in the show, but I'm a bit like, you know what? It's the big talking point at the moment. It's the one that I need to talk about because obviously Jack as well. The fact that this is now, what is it, 44 points we scored in the 97-98 season, and now we're 37th in this season when we've still got 6 games left. But I sit here and think, I don't know where those points are coming from, where those wins are coming from. Like, that's the sad truth at the moment.
Well, with a season like this, they come few and far between, games. You'll end up suffering a lot of defeats, and then you'll pick up, I guess, points against teams that happen to be worse than you. And we're, I think, extremely lucky that there are 3 worse teams than us, and we're entering this Premier League era where most of the teams that come up go straight back down. Whereas, I mean, I've only been a fan of the Premier League and fan of Tottenham since, the late 2000s. But I think, the Premier League has maybe for us, luckily, turned into this, I don't know, just maybe big separation in quality and just in spending, of course, between the actual established Premier League sides and the championship sides. Whereas back in the day, it didn't feel that way. It felt like anyone could technically go down. Anyone was bad enough to go down, not maybe good enough to go down. But in our case, we're just lucky enough that the Ipswiches and the Southamptons and the Leicesters of the world are just probably never really going to crack into the Premier League unless they make a real, defiant step where it takes a lot of investment in their part. But this is easily the worst season in my Spurs lifetime. I would say maybe it gets saved, to be honest. No one really believes that we are going to go on and win the Europa League, but let's say we do. I think all of a sudden, I probably would be completely changing my script and changing my tune, but we'll only wait and see if that actually happens. But for right now, the way this season has gone, the way I felt about Spurs, I've felt very disillusioned. All my happy clapper juices have been drained or at least tested to the most part. And it has felt like the worst season of my Spurs lifetime. And I imagine for a lot of people, even the people that are Spurs fans from, the times when we would win the odd cup here and there, I bet those seasons were still more enjoyable than this one. At least I would guess.
And I think that's the real difficult thing because, like we say, we could all be sitting here on Thursday, we're through to the next round and we'd all be loving life. But Sonny, at the moment, it just feels after that defeat, after the fact that I've got no hope against Frankfurt, after I'm sat here thinking Ange is still the manager, and I get it why he technically hasn't been sacked yet because we're holding on to that last string that we get through versus Frankfurt. But I really don't know how else he's going to save his time here. He's going to be gone if we lose on Thursday.
Oh yeah, like 100% he's gone. And I don't think we will win because the game had to be won in that first leg. And that's again another sign of, I know people will say we were unlucky, but we had to kill that off. And I don't think he did subs early enough. There was like lots of moments where that game was, on a knife's edge where we were dominating and we just didn't have enough. And again, the one attack that Frankfurt had, they scored from it. And that's just what happens with this team. We just are not, we're not potent enough in front of goal and we're not secure enough at the back. And the midfield's just a mess as well. So it's just not worked out how we thought it could go. There was a few who didn't think it, like that, who were probably like going, "We told you so." But a majority of us Spurs fans want the team to do well, whatever. And even now, like people question me, like, why aren't you backing him, back your manager until the end? It's like, but I just feel numb watching it. Like there's no, even yesterday, I was like numb to it. I didn't care, and like we're conceding these goals, and I just have no feeling. And then when I sit back afterwards, that's when I'm like, what the hell is all this about? And Frankfurt are a good team. I can just see them picking us off again. It just really depends on like these players still a bit like Van der Ven, who's been kept back. Like I still don't think they're like up to the speed of playing at the top level again. So that's a struggle. Especially look at Romero, how poor he's been in the last couple of weeks, making mistakes. So I'm not hopeful, but then I still think if we were to get through to Frankfurt, a Bodo Glimt would beat us. A Lazio would beat us. I think that Bodo Glimt to win that tie 2-0. I think even United would beat us, and they look poor. Like I can just imagine us not rising to the occasion whatsoever, no matter how far. Arsenal did it against Real Madrid. We're just a million miles off that team who can rise to an occasion.
And that's the thing. At the moment, Jack, we can't even rise to Wolves. I mean, the first 2 minutes when we concede, and I'm thinking to myself, what on earth is Vic doing? I mean, there's a lot of calamity of errors in that whole game, but that first goal that we kind of conceded just kind of set the whole tone for the game.
I think that's been kind of the real letdown for me as well in recent weeks, and for the most part this season, is a lot of guys who I do really rate and guys that I really like have also been huge contributors to the massive howlers and mistakes that we've seen. Romero is someone who I defend on a number of times and I really like as a player, but he played a massive part in one of the huge errors and has also not had many good moments this season. Vicario is someone who I also really do rate and I think is an amazing goalkeeper, but in recent weeks, again, he's starting to show those signs that he can start games off a little shaky when playing out from the back, or just sometimes has that tendency to just always parry and never really catch, any sort of shots fired at him, which can lead to some sketchy moments. And that's been the unfortunate part is it's almost like I can't really just point everything towards one or two people, in terms of finding a scapegoat, which is one of my favorite things to do, unfortunately. But this year, everybody has, I think, contributed massively to the errors and to the constant howlers that have, to a degree, I think, let down Ange. But I would agree with Sonny that, like, at this stage of the season, when it's just such a continual thing, these errors and these mistakes, the manager at some point has to step in. And personally, I have just been let down by a lot of the players that I do actually rate, in this side that have also made the mistakes. And that's hard to get your head around, really, because when everyone's making mistakes, you don't really know where to point the finger sometimes.
That's the thing, and I think it was just a kind of collective. Obviously, Vic with the first one, then moments later, Sonny's he's passing the ball out after Spencer's passed it back to him. He thinks it's a good idea to chip it. I think we always put this amount of pressure under us, and that is understandably down to Ange's kind of tactics.
Yeah, it don't work at this level. You can't, it sounds stereotypical. You're not given time. Teams press the smaller teams press now. It's not just the big teams who do it, and we've seen it with Jack was alluding to there, the teams that come up from the championship and try and play that way, and they can't do it. These teams can't do it. We can't do it, and we've got a higher caliber of player, but it's still just it's not the same style of football as say like a Pep Guardiola or whatever like teams up and down the league are trying. It's just it just is proper square pegs round holes. It just doesn't work, and it's a shame it doesn't work. But look at it this way: Ange loves his inverted fullbacks. I haven't seen anything really special from them in the last few games. Like that sort of dried up. I know Jed Spencer's looked good, but he's more defensively. He's looked good because he's had to be. Whereas like in the attack, we're not getting the numbers that we did from say Pedro Porro a season or so ago. Romero, I just was watching it back there. The mistake that's basic defending. He's let him like he's wrong side of him, the striker, and he's gone round him. Like he's a World Cup winner. He should not be allowing that whatsoever. And the midfield's just non-existent. I think that midfield, like maybe not Bentancur, but individually there's some good players there, but there's no one there to protect the defence. There's no one there like there's no creativity to unlock it at the moment. Maddison struggles to do that, and then Bergvall, I don't know what his role is in the sense of I think he's great. But it's almost being like sometimes chucked to the wolves and being like, just run around and just sort of like cause some chaos. And that's why he's picked the ball up from the fourth goal and gone like, well, what am I doing with it? And the fact that like the replay for our goal is being, and then they got the other end and score, that's the sign of a poor manager. Like you can't concede straight after scoring. You've got to switch on. And, there's a reason why, like they say, like defense wins titles and stuff. And I know we've had defensive coaches, but you just can't play football like this and just expect good results. Like what's that saying? There's a saying that like a sign of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's tangible. It doesn't work. It may have worked in like Scotland and Japan and Australia, but at this top level everything you do is punished, and it's always going to be that way.
And I think that's the most annoying thing because I sit here and kick myself at points this season where I just was trying to cling on to something with Ange, and it is now telltale that he's just been found out, Jack. And I think as well, obviously, the calamity of mistakes, the defending from the weekend, obviously the second goal as well. He's just left in acres of space to take that touch. Okay, the ball gets saved first, but then he palms it on to Spencer that goes in the back of the net. These things can kind of be taken out of it. We could kind of defend better, but it just seems there's no coaching. They're just left to their own devices.
Yeah, I mean, tactically, there are plenty of issues that I found with Ange. One of them just being actually when we did go through that injury period, I really felt for him. I think any manager would have struggled. But what I did notice is that he did not clearly, he's not able to defend, a lead when he has one, like a lot of good managers can. When you do find that edge in a game and you just need to see out the next 20 minutes, either through some game management, some time wasting, bit of housery, all those sort of things that you can see managers can sort of coach into their players to try to see out games. Spurs have never been that type of team. It always looks like it's a team that could concede at any stage, or the game never really feels like it's ever in control. Always kind of feels a bit basketball-esque. I have had issues with that. My biggest issue and gripe with Ange this year has been when the pressure has been on him, he has, in a way, cowered by blaming either the fans or, whatever sort of, situation with the journalists or the media, and has made a real enemy out of his own fan base, and has made a real enemy out of the journalists and the football media, which I just think has, made life a lot worse for him, and has in a way opened a can of worms on himself to a degree. I wish that Ange kind of had done what we'd seen from previous managers, which is they actually put a lot of the pressure maybe directed more towards the Daniel Levy of the world, the board, and the recruitment and that type of thing. But he's been kind of reluctant to do that, in my opinion. He's actually made more of an enemy out of his own fan base. And regardless of what he thinks of Spurs fans will be here long after he's gone. The same thing with Daniel Levy and the recruitment team. The Spurs fans will forever be here, and, people will go on and move on from this club. And I just think that's always a case of, kind of using Sonny's words, I think, the manager has lost the plot and has really driven himself crazy once you start, blaming the fans for things that are going on. And it's also led to this really, really toxic relationship between us and the players, and us and the manager. And when that's the case, I think, you give yourself even less time to make things better, even less time for things to repair itself. And the moment that he's said, "Oh, once I get my players back, everything will be back to Ange ball again," quote unquote. It obviously hasn't been, but he already kind of made an enemy, in my opinion, out of the fan base on numerous occasions. I think I've lost track of the amount of times that he looks like he's going to slug a fan or have, a scrap with one, or, the time with the Man City situation of last year where he could have easily just disregarded that really silly question, from the journalist, but instead he turned it into some inner monologue speech about how we're losers and he's not, and this sort of thing. And I just think Ange Postecoglou has really lost the plot when you're blaming the people that have no control over the actual, things on the pitch. We don't make substitutions. We don't do the recruitment. We don't make the transfer budget. We're not doing anything, in a sense, that actually impacts what's going on at the day-to-day of Tottenham Hotspur. And he somehow has blamed it on us, or, the media and whatnot, or blamed it on football gods and things like that, which is just, again, like, he's just run out of excuses and run out of people to blame. That's the thing. That's my biggest gripe with Ange for the most part, is I wanted to really like him, and then he's kind of made me not like him from, these sort of instances.
And I think that's the biggest thing for me, because obviously when Ange came in, for once I felt united again. And now Sonny, because he's kind of thrown his toys out the pram, he can't seem to. He's too stubborn enough to say that he's wrong. That it continues going around in this cycle, doesn't it?
Yeah, he went from the media darling. He was saying all the right things, and now, I basically feel like I'm going to repeat what Jack said. He has made an enemy of the fan base. Like, he can't act how he's acted. Like, yeah, Conte called out. Like, Conte never called out the fans. I think he never really wanted to be it, and that's not me backing him. But like Ange, I don't know what his motives are. Like, even. Yeah. His last couple of press conferences where he's like, "I'm gone anyway." Like, it's just I just find him really rude and stubborn, and it's all well and good saying he's one star. Like that was where he signed his death certificate when he said, "I always win in my second season," because then that put a massive pressure on him to now deliver a trophy at the club who hasn't won one in 20 something years. So I just feel like, Jack said there he felt sorry for him with his injuries. I didn't, because I still am adamant that the injuries were of his fault. Like, don't get me wrong, the whole season in the Premier League, a lot of teams have had injuries, minus Liverpool. They're more common than ever due to the amount of games. But the way we play, the way we press, the distance we run, all that sort of stuff, we're like the high end of those stats. We the most in and out of possession, we've got the most distance run and most pressure and all that sort of stuff. And they're going to get knackered. Everyone said this. Celtic fans said it. He can't handle those extra games as well, which we've had. It's sort of been, we play a game in the Europa League, we don't do well on the Sunday. And we've seen that from other teams, like Villa have done it, and Newcastle did it last year. Like sometimes teams struggle in the other competition after playing. But that's on. Is that on? Then it goes back to, is it on Levy? Should he have backed him a bit more? But still, I feel like Ange Postecoglou, whenever he still had that strong team, we've lost to Palace, we've lost to Ipswich's, Leicester's. Look at Leicester. Look how bad Leicester are, and we were one of the only teams that Van Nistelrooy could beat. Like, there's no fight, and that comes from the manager. Like, I just feel like it's hard for me to be and I sound very negative because I was like really positive, even going into this season, even at the beginning of this season. But I just watch it now, and there's nothing that really, gets my gears going on think like that there's an ounce or a sign here. There's just so many better managers in the Premier League now, and they've just won stuff, and they're higher caliber, like a Glasner or Thomas Frank. He's not consistent enough to be a good manager. Like, it's all well and good. Like, do you know what was? I remember this really well. There's someone at work that talks what you said to me when we beat Man City. We were all buzzing. We all were like, "Oh my god, this is amazing! We're back, Ange Ball." And there was one guy, and I thought he was being negative. He went, "Yeah, it's all well and good, but let's see what happens in the next few weeks." And we fell off again, and it all went wrong. And it's not like it's all well and good going and beating Man City 4-0 at the Etihad, but if you can't be consistent, there's no point winning that game. There's literally no point. You've got to have a consistent level. And even last season, I know we finished 5th, but we weren't consistent then, were we? We started off flying, and then there was that horror run at the end where we didn't pick up points in like 5 or 6 games. So it's poor. And when you look at those statistics, and I think it's only literally, I think Southampton, Leicester, and Ipswich are the 3 worse teams than us. Because Wolves have actually lost less games, and they're only 2 points behind us. So, and they sacked a manager, so they've got that's their excuse. We're the only manager, only club hasn't sacked their manager down that end of the table, which is quite balmy. Oh, McKenna, but you can understand maybe why they haven't. But this literally just, I hate being this negative because it's just ridiculous, but it's a shower of rubbish. I wasn't going to say a rude word there, but
well, on that, just quickly, Sonny, like I agree with you on like it's hard. I mean, everybody wants to. A lot of people, including myself, really do try to look for the positive angles of things. But when people have just said at times, like, "Oh, just be positive, just back the team no matter what," it's like, what actually are we backing here? What actually are we, building off of? There is literally nothing that you can look at right now that you would feel like, oh, there's a slight glimmer of hope here, and whatnot, or maybe we can use that, sort of positive spin, for the rest of the season. There is nothing. Like, there is literally nothing to look at that you wouldn't feel like is in any way, sadly, a positive. Everything does kind of appear as a negative, and you have to, at the end of the day, be realistic towards that. And just quickly on the media thing, I just think Ange again had really hurt himself by plenty of managers you see. I actually miss the boring, puzzling rants from Conte where like you didn't really know what he was saying. He would always say mental aspect, physical aspect. He would just repeat those words on a regular basis, and you kind of just fall asleep during that. I really think Ange would have done himself a favor plenty of times this season if he had just been a bit more media trained like that, where you just say something for 5 minutes without actually saying anything at all. I would say actually, the other Sonny, our Sonny, Son Heung-min, kind of does that. His post game sort of reactions are often, I think, actually quite boring, and he doesn't really say anything of actual note. But
every game was the same as well.
Yeah, but that's kind of what you want sometimes. You don't really want them to give any sort of big sound bites or anything to work off of that then comes back to bite you later on. But Ange has continued to do that, and like I said, it's only made things worse for him, I think, in the long run.
It's also like, as well, it's the equivalent of when there's still people out there, and I don't know if they're like Ange fans or whatever. It's like when they say, but what do you want? What do you expect? All this stuff. It's like the equivalent of like if your partner was cheating on you and you knew, and then they go and you go, oh, actually, but like, I don't know if I want to meet someone else. We're together. It's safe, and it's like, no, like it's wrong. It's not working. It's like we've sacked managers for less than this. I know, and I understand why the club sacked Levy. I saw Barnaby do a video on it earlier because of like if he'd won that trophy, like Mourinho, he would have held that against us. Like he would have been like, "Well, I've got you your trophy." Whereas maybe the Europa League is more alluring, and it is a bit bigger trophy. But it's just, I just find it like we're just delaying the inevitable. I feel like we've delayed the inevitable for. I mean, it could have been like a lot worse, maybe like halfway through the season, and maybe they want to start that fresh. But there's just there's no sign, even in the summer. Like we don't know who we could get, we don't know what players are going to stay, we don't know who we're going to bring in, and even bringing in the former Arsenal CEO, Vinay, I can't say his surname. That is alarming as well because he's known for being quite tight with budgets and wanting to be in the Super League. So he's literally like the perfect Levy hire. So that throws it all into more confusion. It's just such a like even now it's hard to do a positive Tottenham video. Like I try and do a positive Tottenham video, being like, "Oh, we've got Luka Vuskovic to come in," and I'm thinking if I'm Luka Vuskovic looking at this, I'd be like, "Can I go back out on loan for another year? This is an absolute turgid place to be."
I think that's the biggest thing as well. And obviously, I've spoke about it before, the fact that we've kept Ange because of this Europa run that we still have. But I'm sat here thinking, Jack, if the board and him himself's coming out, "Oh, I'm gone after this game anyway." What was the point when we had that kind of international break? Could we have brought someone in? I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't want Mason at the helm. I still don't want Mason at the helm. But you're sat here thinking, what was the point of wasting that kind of time?
Well, I think there's a deeper and sadder reason behind it, in that, in a way, Ange Postecoglou has been a shield for Daniel Levy, because the moment that Ange goes, the knives will be sharpened and will be focused back towards Daniel Levy again. And I think Daniel is well aware of that, and that's why he's probably kept him in the job, because if he sacks Ange, he's not going to be able to hire one of the managers that he probably does want that's currently in a job right now in the Premier League or someplace else. They're not going to leave their job and then come to save us, for the rest of the season. They're going to come in the summer, more likely. And so then it will be then a Ryan Mason or a Matty Wells or whoever it might be. And yes, that probably will appease the fan base, but then everybody's attention will be back on, and rightfully so, Daniel Levy. And I think Daniel probably knows that by keeping Ange in the job, he is in a way shielding and protecting himself from a lot of the conversations where, a lot of it is about Daniel Levy, but a lot of it's also about what Ange Postecoglou is doing wrong, regardless of, the Daniel Levy parts of things. And that might be a very depressing reason, but I do think that is the real reason why Ange has stayed in the job this long, is because Levy knows the moment that Ange goes, everybody's attention will be back towards him. And that's just the sad case of it. Whereas probably in the past, Levy was maybe strong enough or ignorant enough to sack the manager and know that he could handle the pressure being put back towards him. But I think this time he knows the moment Ange goes, it's bad news for him.
That's the thing. It would just be another failure on his long list of one.
Yeah.
But again, it's kind of like we're sacrificing how poorly we are, and I just don't know where, if we do lose against Frankfurt, even if, God forbid, Ryan Mason comes in, Sonny, I'm still not too sure where those kind of wins come from towards the end of the season. Are we going to win another game in this 24-25 Premier League season?
I think Ryan Mason has to go as well, though, because he should end his connection with the club. He shouldn't have that pressure again, and two, I don't think he's that good of a coach necessarily. But then that's the problem. That if you sack him on Friday after getting knocked out potentially, then you've got Villa away, Anfield away. I don't think we can get relegated, because I think Ipswich can get relegated if they lose to Arsenal this weekend. Maybe same with Leicester. So there's no point of going, there's no issue with going down. But I mean, I maybe you should just cut the tie, and then maybe we can see if these players have got any minerals towards the end of the season. Because I just think because even. I've said it, so I will admit that. Saying, "Oh, I don't care about the Premier League," I don't care about the Premier League, but it does impact your morale for the Europa League, because now it's one more pressure on it, and two, it's some of those players will play on Thursday. Solanke, Romero, Vicario. So it's not good mentally for them. It's all well and good talking about systems and that, but football is also about fight and determination and being up for it, and they're just going to be here we go again sort of thing. So it's just I don't see the point of keeping him on afterwards, but there's literally, I think I saw a few comments there. There's literally who would it be? There's literally no one. Like we haven't got Tim Sherwood this time around, or unless there's someone in the under 21s, we could like Defoe or someone like that who could step in and do it for a little while, or Yaya Toure when he's not at the club anymore, but like someone like that who can just has somewhat of an association and can just, because I think all the staff need to go as well, because it's just rotten to the core.
And I think that's the big problem we kind of have, because like you say, like, okay, we might not go down, but Jack, with a team like us, and call me maybe it's being a bit big-headed, but with a name like Tottenham Hotspur, you're thinking we should surely be higher up the table, even with these sets of players that we have.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm struggling with. Is there are players who I really highly rate that have had stinkers of seasons, and I'm curious if that is partially more to do with Ange Postecoglou than really to do with them. But then also, I think they also still should be taking responsibility themselves. Like it's not Ange that's making the mistake that Romero did. It's not Ange that's making the mistake that Vicario did. But at the same time, we've seen it so many times this year. When we went into the season, like I don't think even the most cynical of Spurs fans surely were not expecting us to be finishing like this low in the Premier League tables. That really is the damning indictment of it all, is that this is well beyond even the most negative of Spurs fans' expectations. And I think we probably expected that we wouldn't really be able to handle all of the competitions, because I thought the transfer window was a bit of a letdown, and I think Ange was at 2 degrees set up to struggle, because you didn't really get, I think, all the ingredients to really be able to handle all these competitions at once. But, the Premier League has just been a sort of a competition that we've just been found out in, whereas maybe the other ones we've done slightly better in. Not saying it's a compliment to us or anything like that, but Europa League we've been a tad better in. Obviously, the domestic cup competitions we've been better in, but those are all in a way one-off games, here and there, that are kind of sporadic or kind of spattered about in the season, whereas the Premier League is kind of the constant, and the Premier League is usually a reflection of how good you really are. And Spurs have proven not to be a good team at all, because those games happen on a regular basis, where these other ones just happen every now and again, and we seem to be able to show up for these important games every now and again. But the regular season, we've just been, we deserve to be where we are, and there's no hiding usually. I think, as whatever that cliche is, the Premier League, wherever you finish, there's no ifs, buts, or maybes, or where you finish is usually the reflection of how good you actually are.
And obviously going off of like obviously hiding and stuff, and this is probably going to be me being toxic again, but I'm just coming out of it now because I'm kind of done with the season at the moment, Sonny. But obviously the biggest thing with me is the kind of post-match interviews we kind of get. And there was one player that was interviewed at the weekend, and I felt really, really sorry for him, and that was obviously Tell, because obviously he managed to get the goal. I know it's a slight deflection, but it seems to be that we always chuck in players that. I mean, does that mean he's not going to be here for very long? So we just chuck him in the fire. But for you, Sonny, how have you kind of felt with how we do post-match interviews at the moment, with the likes of Tell being interviewed at the end of the game?
I don't think it's just that though. It's like Tell is there calming the fans down at Fulham twice, intervening with the fan who I don't know if it was a Tottenham fan or a Fulham fan, like having a go at Ange near the tunnel. The thing is, when we do get like more senior players do the interviews, it's just PR drivel of like, we're in a bad moment, we're trying. It's like, but putting Tell in that firing line, I mean, it was summed up that Tell's been put in for the interview, but Christian Romero went straight down the tunnel yesterday, and he's meant to be a captain of this team, and I think that's a disgrace. First and foremost, we've gone on here about I've maybe defended the players a bit more than the manager, but when you're actually one of the people who make the mistake as well, you should be. I feel like how many times have we seen the players go up to the away fans and say sorry and clap and all that? It is becoming like Groundhog Day. But yeah, the players have got to take accountability for it. But even like you look at everything they do, like even the media bits, like the little fun bits at the training ground, and Sky Sports interviews, it's always the like nice ones who are being put up for it, like the ones who are like either like your older bears or like your youngsters who haven't really played too much, and they're people won't really have a go. And I saw there's a video doing the rounds from John Nellis of like they're all like making, I don't know if you've seen it, they're dyeing some shoes in tea, and it's like literally the definition of lads with 17th or 16th or whatever, like what are we playing at? And it's probably shot weeks ago, but it's just, and they have to go out there and do all that sort of stuff, but there's always been like a mentality problem at Spurs when it comes to how the players present themselves and all that. But it's not helped by the manager, it's not helped by the owner or the board or whatever. And I just think, it's really sad that Tell was. I've been quite harsh on Tell because I just think the whole transfer is mind-boggling to me. The fact of, I've said I don't think he's good enough at the moment, but also like going out your way to sign a player like that on deadline day who rejected us at first, but then you've got an option to buy that it's just a mess. It's just we've chucked him in and now he's doing all this media stuff. I just think it's just the blind leading the blind at Spurs at the moment. It's no cohesion. There's no one standing up and being being the leaders we need to take us to, well, not even the next level, to take us to being at least a mid-table team. That's the next step. I think Tottenham fans now need to wake up and say, whoever the next manager is, don't expect a miracle. They've got to start from the very, very bottom now. Ange had a little bit, but he's got to lift the players up. That's why I think we need to go for a Thomas Frank or someone, because I think he could get us stable. That's the first thing. We've got to get stable before we can then go to another level, because we're not going to sign anyone of quality now. It's going to be having to, deal with the resources we have.
We've definitely fallen far too low, I think, now. But obviously we have to somehow get our spirits up for Thursday, Jack, because obviously playing that Frankfurt game. And it is going to basically do or die for Ange Postecoglou. So, I mean, I'm going to ask you, how do you think it's going to go and how are you feeling for it?
I, as always, will somehow wake up in some sort of delusional mindset that, we'll get something from this. And, at least I try to put up a brave face. That's just the way I sort of am as a sports fan and as a football fan with my own club, is you just kind of have to some degree, even if you have some real reservations, in your head, I still try to think with my heart more on the actual game day. So I will put up a brave face to, sing out some sort of 2-0 win or whatever type of thing, but I am going into it extremely nervous. Like I said before, though, perhaps in these domestic cup competitions as well as the Europa League, we have been a tad better, and I think we have looked a little bit better. It's not saying very much, but we were the better team in that first leg. We should have won that game 3-1, at least in my opinion. That's more on the players than I think it was on Ange Postecoglou. It's been a huge problem this season that we just don't have anybody in the team that's really that clinical and can put away these big goal scoring chances to give ourselves that cushion, to give ourselves that lead. Even against Liverpool, right? We could have probably won that 3-1 as well if it had not been for Pedro Porro missing that absolutely huge chance. And I think there were some other big chances earlier on in that first leg against Liverpool that we went back to definitely rue and regret, because they came out the gates so fast, Liverpool, to put us under pressure. And then we kind of saw what was going to happen there. That's my worry, is it going to be very similar to that Liverpool semifinal where we felt like we were the better team in the first leg, probably should have won the game or won by more goals, in this case. And the inevitable could happen where, you leave the door open for the other team to use their massive crowd, the singing voices and the very difficult atmosphere to give their own home players, that adrenaline and that advantage. So I'm just very worried it could end up being similar to the Liverpool game, where we really will rue those missed chances. But that's my frustration, is I think regardless of the context around Ange Postecoglou, we should have won that game at least 3-1 in my opinion. And the fact that we didn't really scares me for this game. It's going to be a tough one to get through. Let's just hope that we stay in it. And let's just hope that perhaps they do have their finishing boots on in this game. I doubt, though, we'll be given as many chances as we did in that first leg. So we'll just have to take whichever ones come our way.
I think that's the thing for me, the fact that obviously the second leg is away from home, Sonny. When I first saw that come out, I was like, we need to do the business at home. We haven't done that, which, like Jack said, it makes me feel very nervous for this game.
Yeah, I mean, I always prefer it the other way around, but this is the way the cookies crumbled. I'm not optimistic, because as Jack said there, we had to win that first game. We had to put a result. I've seen some people say well, at least, maybe the worst thing we did was go 1-0 up against Liverpool because it sort of meant we had to go and defend a lead. We now know we have to go out there and attack, but I just don't think we're in like a good attacking form at the moment. That was the thing. At least like some games we were winning 2-1, 3-1s. Like yeah, we were conceding, but I just think our attack is so like all over the place at the moment. And you know, Solanke's form's dropped. Johnson is inconsistent. Son the same. So it's just not looking promising. And I think Frankfurt are going to like learn how to deal with us a little bit better from the first leg. And they'll just be a bit more savvy, counter-attack us more, and just soak up that pressure because they don't have to. I can imagine it going. It'll go. We'll bombard them for 20 minutes and nothing will come from it, and then they'll pick us off. Someone will make a mistake, and then it will end. It'll probably end like 1-2-0 or something to them, and it'll be like, oh, the one that got away. But yeah, it's just like there's nothing to really get me going because they've got like, you know, Ekatike's good player, Gertz's good player, the goalkeeper had a worldie and weren't even their first starting keeper. Like they're a good team. They're also third in the Bundesliga. Like they're a good team. So we don't have any divine right to go out there and expect to win because we are like even in the Europa League this year. I think like we've got results, but I don't think we necessarily played well.
Yeah.
So it's been like the opposite, isn't it? But like it's not been good still. Like there's been like scraping results, but this is where you know you've got to separate the men from the boys, and I just don't think we can. Depends on Kulusevski as well. Like, will he start? Will he, you know, come off the bench like that? He's pivotal to what we do, but I don't think he's just not fit enough, is he? So it's like really chucking them all in the deep end and hoping it all clicks, and I don't think it will.
But even with
But
Kulusevski, I'd say sorry. I just don't think that a huge issue with this season. I don't think this is necessarily Andrew's fault, but I think you still have to work with what you have and try to find a way around it. But Spurs just have no real match winners in the team. You know, the Sonnies of old, Gareth Bales of old, you know, Harry Kane's of old. We just don't have anybody like that anymore that can, you know, just take that half chance or that quarter chance that comes their way. It seems like we just need to be peppering the goal for 90 minutes in order to score 2 goals. You know, we could easily have scored, in my opinion, more than 3 against Frankfurt, but we just don't have anybody in the team that really has just that sort of clinical edge to their game that they know that they need to take that opportunity. Plenty of times we just make the wrong decision or we end up overplaying the pass or we end up just misplacing the shot or whatever. We've seen that countless times this season that Spurs, and maybe that was one of the things we were holding on to early on in the season, is that there are plenty of games that we dropped points in or maybe even lost, but we felt like we were the better team and deserved more from it. That Frankfurt game did feel similar, but it was also, you know, the 10th time that I think we've gone through that, you know, which is, again, I think a reflection of, you know, the manager needs to find a way around that to some extent. You know, if you don't know that, if you are pretty confident that your team doesn't have any real match winners in it, you then probably need to lock up the defense a bit more and make sure that you can then try to take whatever moments do come your way. But that's my big frustration also with this season. It's just nobody in this team has struck me as a guy that can really take the game by the scruff of the neck. And then when they do have you know, an opportunity that you know they're going to take it. So many people have missed absolute sitters this season, Johnson included, even though he is our biggest, our top goal scorer. That chance that he had against Frankfurt towards the end there, and Ange kept him on the pitch for that reason, to potentially be that match winner. He skied it over the bar, and I'd argue that was an easier chance than what he had against Southampton.
and I think that's like you say, it's been a running theme for Spurs this whole season. I just hope that I say the gods from above. I sound a bit like Ange now, but I just wish that they are looking down on us because we need something this season
Yeah.
to. I mean, I don't even think it saves our season if we win the trophy. I mean, it'd be amazing because we've needed it for so long. But can you imagine where we are in the league and then we win a trophy, probably our worst season ever? I mean, I'll take it. I'll snap your hand off. But I don't think it's a true reflection of how the season has kind of gone. But hopefully, come Thursday evening after the final whistle, we are in a better place, shall I say. But it's been a great night to talk about, obviously, Spurs. I don't normally like talking about Spurs at the minute, but it's been good to chill out with you guys and dissect it all because I think we all kind of need it at the moment. So we'll go around the table and say our goodbye. So, Jack, thank you again for joining me. Where can everybody find you doing your thing?
Thanks, Holly, for having me again. It was great questions from you as always, very efficient as well. And I definitely was able to get some therapy out of it. Hopefully someone did, from this panel, or somebody did in the chat with us. But yeah, thanks for having me over with the more Irish person, Dave Harris, Irish Hotspur. If you need someone to scream and shout at the wall Thursday night with you, during the Europa League game, that's where you can find us.
I was going to say, I am not doing a watch along because there'll be things being thrown at the telly, knowing my
100%.
thing. So, no, but no, thank you, Jack. And also, Sonny, thank you again for joining me. Where can everybody find you doing your thing?
Yeah, thank you. I want to just let everyone know I'm not this negative in normal life. It's just Tottenham are a bane of my life. But yeah, Sonny Talk Spurs on YouTube, and then Sonny Snelling on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Put a lot of content out. So yeah, I've got a video coming tomorrow. As I said, the worst. Are we the worst? Is this the worst Tottenham team of all time? So it's worth. If you want to see me lose my head again, go over there. Put the notification bell on. It'll be a blast.
Oh dear, but no, thank you both, and obviously thank you to everybody that's been in the chat that's going to rewatch this. Make sure if you haven't already to please like and subscribe. There'll be no Hollie's Hotspurs on Monday because I think we're playing. As you can tell, my brain is gone to mush because it's
Yeah,
nearly 8
Nottingham
o'clock.
Forest.
There we go. So there won't be that. I might surprise you all with a watch along, but I doubt it because again, I'll be throwing things at the wall. But like I say, we'll be back again. I think Wes and Nelson will be back with me next Wednesday for the Hotspur Huddle. It's been a little while, so it'd be nice to have everybody back for that one. And like I say, I guess like we always say, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.